You know, the beginning for this United Catalyst was Girdler Catalyst, and Girdler Catalyst started as a research project in the Girdler Corporation here in Louisville, and they, as I understand it, Walter Girdler came to Louisville from Somerset, Kentucky, sometime in the late teens or early 20s, and he was in the hardware business and welding supplies, and welding supplies somehow led him to gases, and there was a Dr. Bottoms that had the original patents on the MEA CO2 removal systems. And so this, as I just piece it together, this led them to the interest in gas processing, and somehow along the way they realized they needed catalysts, and maybe even around wartime they had hard times getting catalysts from Germany, but also a lot of companies, maybe like Standard Oil of New Jersey and DuPont, produced their own catalysts, and maybe these really weren't on the market. Somehow they decided they should start a research project, and Dr. Ronald Reitmeyer came here from Washington and headed up the research project. I know our first technical report, T report, was done in 1939. And sometime in the early 40s, Girdler started producing our first catalyst, which was the iron chrome high temperature shift catalyst. And then that led into the other catalysts which are used. Well, Girdler's interest was in making hydrogen and in making ammonia. And so you need 6 or 7 different catalysts for that. And I don't know the sequence beyond the high temperature shift catalyst, but they went from the high shift, of course, the reforming, and much later in the 60s they came to the low temperature shift, and in the, I think 1951 they had the first methanation catalyst. So progressively they moved into that. So I always say the business began first as a lab project, and then they were making catalyst internally for consumption or use by Girdler Engineering. Sometime in the late 40s, mid-40s, late 40s, they got the right to sell the catalyst outside to other companies. So then it became the catalyst division of Girdler. And approximately in the mid-50s, but exactly in October 1957, the Catalyst and Chemicals Inc. company was formed here in Louisville, because a number of people became unhappy employees in the Girdler Catalyst Company. And what I've always heard is they had a management consulting company came in and looked how they should reorganize. Girdler along the way had merged with National Cylinder Gas, and they had formed the Chematron company. In how they were going to structure this new company, not only Dr. Reitmeyer, but a number of people became unhappy with, I guess, their new role. And so they left and started the Catalyst and Chemical companies. Those original employees in the Girdler company, names that I know, people who were there in the early days, in addition to Ronald Reitmeyer, Kent Atwood did all the kinetics work, Paul Huber did all the plant engineering and the construction. Paul Boyd was one of the early R&D and then into tech service and sales. People like John Cromines, Harold Fleming, and then later Earl Englert. These were some of the early names. And there's some other, Dwayne Allen, Bill Miller, some other people who were in the Girdler side who retired before we came together, and I got to meet some of those people. So in about 1957, Ronald Reitmeyer, Paul Huber, John Cromines, Earl Englert, Kenton Atwood, Bill Price, and Harold Fleming. There were 7 original employees, core employees who started Catalyst and Chemicals. I think eventually, maybe as many as some 30 people left the Girdler company and came to the Catalyst and Chemical company. And this group concentrated on the ammonia and hydrogen catalyst. And then the Girdler company did 2 things. They looked international and concentrated on exports, but they also concentrated on diversifying. So in 1977, when the 2 companies, and I'll have to some steps out, but when the 2 companies came back together, it was actually pretty good because we now had a much more diversified company because I was in the catalyst and chemicals part. We were still, more than 50% of our business was in the ammonia and hydrogen synthesis gas kind of business. But the people in the Girdler company, this was less than 25% of the business. And so they had expanded into fats and oils, nickel hydrogenation catalysts, some more in selective hydrogenation, styrene catalysts, and some other custom catalysts that we didn't have in the CCI company. And the steps that took place, the people left the Girdler company and formed the CCI company in 1957. The Girdler company formed a joint venture with Sud Chemie, I think in 1959. I think I have somebody just sent me an old Chematron annual report. So 1959, I think they formed it was called Girdler Sud Chemie Catalyzorn in GSK in Munich. So Sud Chemie started in about 1962 making catalysts in Moosburg, Germany, and as a result of that 50-50 joint venture company, when Chematron was looking for a partner, was looking to sell their catalyst business in 1974, one of the obvious buyers was their partner in Germany, Sud Chemie. So Sud Chemie in August of 1974 bought the Girdler catalyst business. And Dr. Reitmeyer, who was the founder of Catalyst and Chemicals and also the founder of Girdler, he died in October, I think it was October 11th in 1971. And so from that time to 1976, Joe Parker, who was the chairman and had raised and had been an original employee of the Girdler Engineering Company, he had helped raise the capital for the Catalyst and Chemical Company. He was looking for a buyer for the CCI company. And so it just turned out that the best buyer was Sud Chemie, and the chance to put back together the Girdler and CCI companies back together. So Sud Chemie bought the CCI, about 65% of CCI company in about July of 1976. And we put the two, at the end of 1977, Girdler and CCI were merged to form United Catalyst, and we had our first business year in 1978. And so that's really how the United Catalyst was formed out of the Girdler and Catalyst and Chemicals. And then along the way, we, coming up to say 1990, we acquired the Houdry catalyst business from Air Products. And Houdry, I think, had been owned by Air Products since about 1963 or something like that. And Air Products, I think, then was, they had made some big pushes in the catalyst business, but some of their businesses had been in the auto exhaust catalyst, and I think they eventually sold some of that business. So as they were consolidating, they eventually decided maybe the best thing was to sell their Houdry catalyst business. So we bought that in June of 1990. And then in 1992, in May, we brought the Prototech catalyst business from the original founder, a fellow named Walter Judah, who's also the founder of the Ionics company in the Boston area, which does a lot of reverse osmosis water purification work. And he was mostly interested in research. He was doing a lot of electrochemical work, but also catalyst work and surface coatings. So we bought that business from Walter Judah, which was a way for us to enter the environmental catalyst business. On the international side, I should say that in addition to the Sud Chemie joint venture, which was formed in about the early 60s, the Girdler company also formed in approximately 1962 or 3 the Nissan Girdler joint venture, and the Catalyst and Chemicals company formed a joint venture in about 1965 or so with the Toyo Koatsu Company, which is now Mitsui Chemical Company. And both of those joint ventures, which are more than 30, even up to almost 35 years old, are still going. Nissan Girdler and Catalyst and Chemicals Inc. Far East. The CCI company formed a joint venture with the Lauji family in India, United Catalyst India Limited, UCIL, and that venture's been going now 27, 28 years, and that's still a joint 50-50 joint venture. The Catalyst and Chemicals Inc. Far East, Japanese partner of ours, formed a joint venture with Kujang, a fertilizer company in Indonesia, Kujang United Catalyst, and that's more than 10 years old now, and we're producing, most of these plants began, I think all of these plants began, concentrating on syngas. And I always say that ammonia, and really syngas meaning a catalyst for ammonia, and I always say ammonia is the first chemical, because you got to have ammonia for fertilizer. And then after that you need ethylene and other things. But that's why we have had the opportunity to go around the world and start these businesses, is because people needed to build up their fertilizer business, needed the ammonia business, and they wanted to have a either domestic or at least regional source of catalyst. So we have that describes our plants in India, two joint ventures still in Japan, one in Indonesia, and then in 1979, Sud Chemie formed a joint venture with Sasol to produce the phosphoric acid on Kieselguhr catalyst, which we call our C84 catalyst. And this was for making the diesel fuels from gases, from synthetic fuels. And more recently, and now I think it's like in the early 90s, Sud Chemie formed a joint venture again with the Central Energy Fund in South Africa for the Musgas project, again a synthetic fuels project, and producing zeolites in South Africa. So those two ventures were more in the fuels area, and that's what. So it was the catalyst know-how which Sud Chemie had, working in partnership with the Sasol, but also with Lurgi, the engineering company in Germany, and that led us to catalyst production in South Africa. So, but all of this began in Louisville, Kentucky, in the coming out of the Girdler Corporation. So we now have two catalyst plants in Louisville, one in Boston. We have three in Louisville. We count the Hoodery as a separate plant, but it's at one of our sites. Two catalyst plants in Germany, two catalyst plants in Japan, two catalyst plants in India, one company, one catalyst plant in Indonesia, and two catalyst plants in South Africa. Pretty fast, huh?
What about Zeochem?
Zeochem was a joint venture which we formed in 1980 with a Swiss company, Chemische Fabrik Udikan, now known as Chemie Udikan. Udikan is a small town outside of Zurich, and through the contact we had with Dr. Karl Hofstadt of Sud Chemie, who was the original founder of catalyst within the Sud Chemie group, he introduced us to Chemie Udikan. They had developed their own molecular sieves for mostly adsorbent applications, 3A, 4A, 5A, 13X. And we got together. Initially we were importing their products, and we formed a joint venture to build the plant. We got started up in 1980. And we were 50-50 partners up until the summer of 1997. And then we sold our 50% interest in Zeochem to Chemie Udikan. And so that's now 100% owned by Chemie Udikan.
How do you see catalyst business going in the future in general, without getting in with petroleum companies cutting back, for example, research?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of trends. One trend is, there's a continuing, I think this consolidation of catalyst companies, I think, will continue. For example, Unichema has their nickel hydrogenation catalyst business for the fats and oils, the edible oil, and the fatty acids business. And they have a big, nice plant over in northern Germany. And recently, last May, I think, ICI bought all of Unikima's specialty chemical business, including the catalyst business. And ICI also had the Catalco division with the syngas business. And early in 1997, they bought the syngas catalyst business from BASF. And then with the acquisition of Unikima, they also got the catalyst business of nickel hydrogenation. Plus, they got the catalyst business of Crossfield. Now, they haven't fully consolidated that, but there is probably a consolidation of those catalyst activities. So one trend is the consolidation. And the other trend, I think, will continue, whereas when this company got started, many people were producing their own catalysts. And it was not unusual for a chemical company, if they're going to develop a new process, they would develop a new catalyst, and as part of building the plant to make whatever petrochemical they had, I mean, they would also build a plant to make the catalyst, and they would make their own catalyst. I think not 100% exclusively, but the really strong trend is that people work with now well-established catalyst companies to work with them and make partners, and depending upon people's experience and know-how, to work with them to develop the catalyst. People still within their own research, they're still going to need to do their own research, either some product improvement or even some fundamental research. But at some point, then they work together with somebody who has the capabilities and the equipment and the facilities and the environmental equipment to produce the catalyst. And there is both in the research and in the operations a trend to having leaner organizations. So not only in research but also in tech service areas. More employees, more companies are looking to us to provide more tech service. And in the past, companies had more process engineers on the units to do some of these activities themselves, but they looked to the catalyst company to provide these services more. So I think there's going to be plenty of work for people in the catalyst business to do in near term.
What would be the biggest change you've seen in the catalyst, in United Catalyst, since you started or even before till now?
Okay. Well, I would say for us, we in our catalyst production, I think we had a lot of batch operations, and maybe coming, say, directly from the laboratory to the manufacturing, and we still do. I mean, it's not like we don't have batch operations, but we now have today at least two product lines which are continuous computer-controlled production. And we thought that this might be really hard to do, given that you're handling a lot of solids. I mean, we know in an oil refining or in a petrochemical plant where you're running gases or liquids through pipes that these controls are, I mean, this can be done. But to be able to do it with all the solids handling and all the criticalities, whether it's surface area, pore volume, crush density, all the physical properties that we're all concerned about, but we've been able to do that. So we're really proud of that, if you will, improvement, step change. And I think the other thing is the analytical tools of what you can see. I mean, I still don't think anybody have seen a chemical reaction take place on a surface. I don't think anybody can report that they saw that. But I think the analytical tools to really look at a surface and understand what you're seeing when you look at it, with so many different types of analytical tools is, I mean, there's probably been more growth in that than, I mean, for example, if we're precipitating nickel, I mean, whether you're coming from an acid or an amine, so there's not an infinite number of ways to do that. The controls are better, the understanding's better, but I think the bigger change is in the analytical area.
How did you get into catalysis?
Well, I started here in 1965. I came out of, let's see, went to MIT and got a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science degree in chemical engineering. And I was from the Louisville area, and Catalyst and Chemicals had they were growing at the time, and they were hiring engineers. And so I started. Actually, I was fortunate. I had a summer job at BF Goodrich for 2 summers and at DuPont for 2 summers. And so I took a bunch of polymer courses. I thought I would end up working in polymerization or something like that. But so those courses, I mean, they were nice to take, but I really should have taken catalyst courses, you know. But because the company was growing and hiring is the reason I was able to get on here, you know.
And how did you?
Well, I entered at the, let's see, we sort of in the process quality control area, and then I went into the production department. I was assistant to the production manager, and in a couple of years I moved over into our engineering services department, which was involved in all the design calculations. So if customers were going to build a new ammonia plant and send in their material balance and had how much catalyst to put in each reactor. So we did a lot of those calculations. I worked with Kent Netwood and Ken List, and this was in the pre-computer days. So we actually were hand calculating these with the slide rule, which is probably hard to believe. And then we got it all computerized. We were some of the pioneers in getting it on the batch. It was an IBM 1130 computer. You had to fill out your little sheet, and then somebody had to key punch the IBM card, and then they had to run it through the IBM, and then they give you the answer, and then you'd make a change, and then you'd have to give it to them, and they'd have to key punch, and I mean, it was several iterations and multi-days to get through some of this sometimes. And if you wanted to go fast, you could go fast, but it was really different than it is now. So I did that for a few years, and then it was a little bit of a consolidation of our engineering design and the research and development, so I have responsibility for the research and development from 1969 to 1975 or so. And as I mentioned, Dr. Reitmar died in 1971. So I guess because I had some experience in manufacturing, I became vice president of operations, involving the technical side and the manufacturing. And then I became general manager of Catalyst and Chemicals in 1974. And when Sud Chemie bought the company, there really wasn't a president. Joe Parker was the president, but he was also the owner, and he was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I became president in 1976. And so we've had a pretty good growth since then. I think it's been a good experience for me. I want to say that's what I want to say. It's been a good experience for me.
How would you describe Parker and the person that started Girdler?
I think Joe Parker, his good experience was he had worked. He had a chemical engineering degree from Auburn, and he had a chemistry PhD from Nebraska. And then he went to work for DuPont, and he came, I think he was at the experimental station up in Wilmington, I think. And then he came to Louisville in the either late 30s or early 40s for the neoprene plant, which was started up here. And somehow his story is he understood DuPont was going to move him back to Wilmington, and they were going to put him in the same old job. But then later he said, well, maybe it was going to be a different job. But anyway, that kind of uncertainty led him to start working with Girdler Corporation. And then he moved out to Tulsa, and he was their field sales manager, trying to sell sulfur removal plants and hydrogen plants for Girdler. And but I think along the way that he had met Dr. Reitmar, who founded the Catalyst department, and then eventually the division. And I think Joe, then he went in business for himself. He left Girdler, was in business for himself, and he had some success. And I think at some point they had said, if you ever want to get started, he would be interested in being in that business. I think Joe basically loves the chemistry business and the chemical business. So they, I don't know exactly what brought them together, but they clicked, and Joe brought there were a number of investors from Oklahoma, mostly in the oil and gas business, put the money up to start the catalysts and chemicals. Dr. Eibmeyer was the strong chemical background, and Joe Parker was bringing in this relationship, he was bringing the financial side, but also the business side. And Joe, Doc was good on all the technology and the chemistry and manufacturing, and Joe was good on the aspects of the overall business and the financing, but also really good on the people side. And when Dr. Eibmeyer died, we had some tough years. Then it was kind of a downturn in the ammonia business, and this was always a real cyclical business. And Joe had a great spirit. You know, he gave a lot of us an opportunity to see if we couldn't turn the business around and get back on track, and I guess we did. And he was just a super person, super positive individual. He absolutely 100% on positive reinforcement. You know, so really a good person to work with. So I think I had good experience of working with Ronald Reitmeyer and Joe Parker, but also good people like Harold Fleming and John Cromines, who originally had worked together out in Phillips, and then I don't know what year, sometime in the 40s, they came to work together for Girdler, and then they both somehow left Girdler and went to work with Catalysts and Chemicals, and they both left in about 1969 and started their catalyst testing, what that was called, Catalyst Services, Inc., CSI, where they did a lot of catalyst consulting for customers, inspecting catalysts, testing catalysts, recommending different catalysts. So they had an interesting career, starting in Phillips Bartlesville Research and going through Girdler, Catalysts and Chemicals, and Catalyst Services Inc. You know, so there were some really good people who worked in this field that I had a chance to learn from.
How do you make the switch from engineering, science to financial world and management?
Well, I mean, this is a pretty technical business, you know, so I don't know whether I ever made such a switch, but I don't know what to say, whether we made a switch. We always had on that side of the business the original chief financial officer of the Catalysts and Chemicals company was a fellow named Wilbur Allen, who was really thorough and really had a good mastery of that side of the business. So I probably learned a lot from Wilbur. And then a few years later, Larry Mulcahy came in, and Larry was really good. So, and now we have Frank Wathen. So, I mean, I think we've had a nice good team. And since our catalyst, I should have said, is we were talking about the people side. On the United Catalyst team, in addition to myself, we had Jim Wright, who was really in the Catalysts and Chemicals group, and really took the lead in our catalyst business. And we had Bill Munnan, who was vice president of manufacturing in the Girdler chemical when we came together. And Bill took the job for the new business development. And then Larry Mulcahy was our chief financial officer. So the four of us worked together as a team, really.
Well,
Does that help?
that helps.
Good. Do you want me to get you set up with Lee now?
Yeah,